Let's walk through the new item grid. What is the grid? The grid is a Flash-based spreadsheet used to complete product data. It's used by vendors who send items to IMA using data synchronization. One of the biggest positives of using the grid is that you can work up to 50 items at a time. Before we had the grid, vendors had to set everything up manually, which meant they had to enter all of the information about the items separately, and it was a very time-consuming process. So being able to work up to 50 items at a time and copying down information really speeds up the process quite a bit and makes it much more efficient. A quick note about processing and transmission times. So items may not immediately be available in IMA after syncing. For One World Sync, transmission times occur hourly between 2 a.m. and 11 p.m., except after 12 p.m. Saturday, Eastern Standard Time. For OpenText, transmission times occur 3 times a day at 12 a.m., 4 p.m., and 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you use a data sync provider besides One World Sync or OpenText, you'll need to reach out to them directly to find out when their transmission times occur. So there are a lot of fields that can be synced over from your data sync provider, but we do require some additional fields for items set up before it can be approved through the vendor role. So this is a list of all the non-data catalog fields that are updatable on a grid. So not all of these are required, but they are available to you to enter the information that you can't otherwise sync over. Alright, so we're actually going to go into IMA now, and I'm going to walk you through setting up an item using the new item grid. Alright, so to access this page, you can hover over Data Catalog and click New Items. So on this page, you have to enter at least one of the criteria, but be careful not to enter too much, because if you enter too much criteria, it may narrow that list down so much that there's no results that come back. So you could enter a retail marking number if you're looking for an each, or a shipping marking number if you're looking for a carton. Just make sure that you put these in the correct fields, because I've had several vendors reach out to me because they weren't able to find their UPC they were looking for, but it was because they were entering the retail marking number in the shipping marking number field, or they were entering the shipping marking number in the retail marking number field. So be sure that you are putting it in the correct field. You could also search by description. You could search by vendor stock number. You could just select your pay-DUNS number, or you could enter a load date. So for example, if you synced over items 2 weeks ago and you synced over items today, you may want to come in here and just work on the items from 2 weeks ago. So you could enter the load date from and load date to. One thing I do want to point out to you is the 60-day inactivity notice. So items in the new item task list are automatically deleted after 60 days of inactivity. To prevent them from being deleted, you can just come into IMA and put them on a grid, and the 60 days will reset. Now, if your items do get deleted, it's really not a big deal. All you would need to do is resync them from your data sync provider. Alright, so I am going to look for a specific carton, so I'm going to enter the shipping marking number, and I'm going to click Get Task List. Alright, so your task list will come back. Since I was looking for just a specific carton, this is a pretty small list. If you just select your DUNS number, you will see everything that is in this list under your DUNS number, so it could potentially be a pretty large list. You can use these filters at the bottom of your screen to further focus that list if you came back with a lot of search results. Probably the most helpful ones to use to focus that list could be change type. So right now we only see new because there's only one item in my task list. But some other change types you might see here include CHG for change, or OPR new for new vendor packs for existing items. So if you know specifically you just want to look for new items and you have more options here, you could select new, so that's all that you'll see in your task list. You could also go ahead and select your vendor stock number if you did it on that first page, and you'll see all of the load dates that are available for the items in your task list here. So one of the first things you want to do before actually putting this on a grid is you want to click this plus sign to explode out your carton. So now you can see all of the eaches that belong to this carton. Now here we can see there's a 2T, a 3T, and a 4T. We want to double check and make sure that all of the eaches that we're expecting to be in this carton are showing up here. If there was supposed to be an additional size, like a 5T, at that point you would stop, you would not work this, you would go back to your data sync provider and try to resync with that additional size that you're missing or that additional UPC that you're missing from your assortment. So if everything is here, you can go ahead and click the box in the far left column next to the shipping marking number and click Create Grid. Now, you don't have to select the box next to all of these eaches, because whenever you select a carton, it's going to bring in all of the eaches associated with that carton. So let me go ahead and click Create Grid. And now it brought us to a page where we have to enter information about the items going onto this grid. So first you want to enter, or you want to select your division. From there, you would select your order dones. Now I have to actually search for an order dones because I'm set up as a super user, but you should have a drop-down list available. From there, you select your category. Now, you can select your subcategory, but it's not required at this point. You'll see it doesn't have the red asterisk next to it. So we're going to leave it blank for now so we can enter it on our grid. It is required before you can actually approve the grid. But you'll notice that everything with the red asterisk, that's going to be applied to all of the items on your grid, and it has to be the same for everything on a grid. So if you're trying to work items in different categories, you're going to have to place them on different grids. Or if you're trying to work items with different flow types, they'll have to be set up on different grids. But you can apply different subcategories to items on the same grid. So we'll leave that blank for now. And now we just want to select the flow type. Now, if you go to select your flow type, and let's say your buying team or your inventory team wants you to select DSD, and maybe you don't typically ship DSD, maybe you typically ship DC, and you don't have it available here in your dropdown. That can happen, and what that means is that your DUNS number is not set up for that flow type. So you should reach back out to your merchant and inventory teams, make sure that that's the flow type they're actually wanting you to select. And if that's the case, then and they want you to use that specific order DUNS that you have selected, because you may be set up for more than one order DUNS, you would need to reach out to the vendor onboarding team, and they will have to get your DUNS number set up for that additional flow type. So for this example, I'm going to select DC, and then I'm going to click Apply. Now your grid can take a little bit of time to set up. Typically, the more items you're putting on your grid at once, the longer it's going to take for the setup time. So this actually wasn't that bad, it's just one item, so it came back pretty quickly. So this is the default view for your grid. Here under Field, you'll see it says Empty Required. That's the default view. So what that means is all of these fields are going to be the empty required fields. So fields that still need to be completed before you can approve it. Now you can change your view by these buttons here. So we have a few options. If you want to see every single field that's available, you can select all. If you're looking for a specific field and you know which tab it's located on, I recommend instead searching for it by the tab, because it kind of narrows down how many fields are going to be showing up in your grid. And you'll notice as you change your view, it changes it in the title here. So here we can see vendor packs. Oh, it changed to KSN. this was showing all, so that way you always know which view you're currently in. So we're going to go back to empty required. So additionally, up at the top, you can see some additional information about your grid. So you can verify that you selected the right division and category for your grid. You can verify that you selected the right flow type, as well as the right DUNS number. Over further to the left, you can see that the grid type is in. That means this is a new grid. And you'll see here that this has a, it looks like a grid in the background, and it has the exclamation point in red. That means that this is initiated, but it hasn't yet been saved. So it won't let us save it until we actually do something, or at least click into a field. Now we can save it. Be sure to save your grid frequently. It will time out after 30 minutes of inactivity. So if you have entered information and you leave your desk and you haven't saved it, you may lose all of the work that you did. Alright, let's go to empty required. And we're just going to work through this from left to right. Now, if you're working a grid at the same time as you're watching this, the fields may be in a slightly different order, or you may have some that are on your grid but aren't showing up on mine, or vice versa. So that just means that different fields were synced over for you than what I had synced over for mine. But I'm going to work through these left to right, so feel free to follow along in another window. Alright, so first we have pre-priced method. So here you can select whether it's pre-priced, and then this double down arrow, you can click that and it copies down the information to the other KSNs. Alright, so next we have brand. You can just start typing that and it'll bring your brand up, and you can click the one that matches and you can click copy down. Now you'll notice this one didn't actually copy down, and that's because you can't copy from exploding assortments down to typicals. So we'll do it one more time for the typicals. And now it copied down. So you can see if you're working up to 50 items at a time, how that would save a whole lot of time by being able to copy down to all of your typicals. Alright, so next we have depth, width, and height. So this is information that can actually be synced over from your data sync provider, but in this specific instance it wasn't. So I'm going to enter that information here. And okay, and then the weight. Okay, so the weight has to match exactly. So you have to take into account the total number of items that are going into this carton. Now I've seen a lot of vendors, as they're going through this, they would just add up what they see here. So they would put 3. It's actually not right, because there's more than one of these eaches within the carton. So we need to know how many are going in the carton. To see that, you can go to your packages tab. And now we can look at the member quantity. We can see there's a total of 6. So that lets us know that we should actually have a weight of 6 if the individual weight was 1. So I'm going to go ahead and scroll over and change that weight back to 6. Also, one of the features I wanted to point out to you, you have this lock sign right up here, this lock icon. So right now, when I scroll left to right, the fields description line 2 and to the left of that, they stay stationary. So I'm only scrolling on fields to the right of those. And that's fine if I'm using a larger screen. That works great. If you're using a small screen, like just your laptop screen, for example, that might not give you a lot of room to work in the grid to set up your items. So you can click this lock icon, and now, and that's another thing I like to show you. So a lot of times when you click the lock icon, it changes your scroll bars here. And then you might think, oh, my scroll bar has disappeared. I can't scroll at all. Where did it go? It's still there. All you need to do is just scroll down from the right side, and now there's our scroll bar. And now if we scroll left to right, it scrolls the entire screen, so that left section is not locked. To relock it, just click that lock icon one more time. And let's return to our empty required view. So you'll see those fields that we completed are now gone because they are completed. Next we have perishable indicator. So this is apparel, so we're going to select no. And next we have country of origin. So you can just start typing the country and it'll come up with it and you can click add. Again, you can add as many as you need to here. So here we have 2 countries and I'll choose copy down. Next you have your HTS code. And this can be difficult to find an exact match, so don't stress out too much over it. You can enter information here and search. It'll come back with a list of everything that has that anywhere in the description. So just find the best thing you can, the closest match that you can, and click add, and then copy down. So next we have fabric metal content. So this is where you select the fabric or metal makeup of your items. And you can add more than 1 fabric here. So I'm adding 2. And after you select your fabric, you actually have to enter a percentage. And this percentage has to add up to 100. So once you've entered that, you can click copy down. So next we have some questions about our items. If we hover over the heading, it'll actually expand that out so you can read it. So this is asking if it contains specific aerosols, chemicals, pesticides. This is an apparel product, so it's not going to have that, and it even lists some of the businesses where you would answer no to this question. So we're going to go ahead and select no and copy down. So the next question asks if this product contains PVC. So this is one of the California Prop 65 questions. So we're going to select no, copy down. And the next one, does this product contain PVC in its packaging? So we are going to select no again and copy down. Alright, next we have hazard storage code. So let's take a look at these. This comes under the hazardous questions on the packages tab. Like I said, if you don't know the answer to these questions, please talk to someone at your company who knows your product better. It is very important that this information is completed correctly. I gave the example where it was not, and some product ended up on a plane that actually caused a fire. And I believe it was some sort of camping gas, like propane gas, or may not have been propane gas, but some sort of gas for camping. So it is very, very important this is answered correctly. And 2 things that I want to point out on here that you may not have thought of being listed as hazard. We have pet foods and pet chews, and we also have food products. So it's important this is answered correctly as well, because there are certain rules regarding storage of items. So these types of items cannot be stored next to other types of items with chemicals. So this is not hazardous, it's apparel. So I selected that and copied down. Alright, so next we have cost and member cost. So this is often the same. And what's nice is after you enter the member cost, it automatically calculates the exploding assortment cost. So we can just enter that same one into the cost column. Alright, so next we have our primary store format. We are going to select Kmart. You may select FLS for Sears full line stores. And again, you can't copy from exploding assortment to typicals, but now that we have our typical selected, I'm just going to copy it down. Alright, so next we have ship off from. These are our ship points. So we will select ship point here and then copy down. As a reminder, if you want to use different ship points for different DC locations, you won't be able to select different ones at this point in the item setup. You have to wait until the item becomes operational, then you can go back and do a change request. We'll be going over that in session 4. The next field we have is the vendor applied EAS tag. So we're going to choose no. And then next we have the projected first in-store date. So this is the date that your buying team has given you that they expect to have the item in the store and start selling to customers. It's really mostly used for informational purposes and prioritization, because this is one of the fields that the merchant and inventory roles will be able to see in their task list on items. It helps them to prioritize and know which items they really need to be working on more than others. Alright, so next we have some additional California Prop 65 questions. Again, if you hover over the question, it will break it out for you. So we are going to select the first one, tested does not contain any California Prop 65 chemicals. The second question, again, if we hover over it, it's asking if there is a California Prop 65 warning label on the package. We're going to say no. Alright, so next you'll see we have the SHC subcategory. So this does have to be selected before you can approve it. But again, you can choose different subcategories for different assortments that are on the grid. Everything that is within an assortment does have to be set up in that same subcategory, so everything here has to be the same subcategory. But if I had another carton, that could be a different one. And then finally, we do have the EAS tag required indicator one more time because it's located on both the vendor pack tab and the item tab. So just make sure that they do match. Alright, so everything has been entered for our grid. So now we can click approve. And you'll see here it says queued. That means it's getting ready to process the grid. This is going to update eventually. So we are going to come back to this in a future session. Oops. Alright, so quick knowledge check. What is the maximum number of items that should be worked at a single time on the new item grid? Yeah, it keeps wanting to go back to Internet Explorer. Sorry about that. Alright, so the answer is 50 items. The system will let you put more than 50 items on a grid, but please don't do that because it slows the system down for everybody. So please limit yourself to 50 items. 1 second. Okay. Oops. I gave away that answer. But items in the new item task list are automatically deleted after how many days of inactivity? 60 days. And final question. Be sure to save your grid frequently to avoid losing your work if the grid times out. The grid times out after how many minutes of inactivity? 30 minutes. So again, make sure that you are saving your grid frequently.